So 2 months ago, I paid $289 to Playlist Push to run a campaign for my brother's song. 1 month ago, the Playlist Push campaign ended. So I made a video already on some of the early results from the campaign, but Playlist Push actually doesn't release like their full report until a month after the campaign ends. And so today, I wanted to make a follow-up video where I break down basically the full story of what happened with the campaign. So without further ado, these are the results of my campaign with Playlist Push. All right. Welcome. Sound like Matthew McConaughey there. Welcome to this breakdown of the results of Playlist Push. So it's a month after the campaign ended when I made the first video, which I'll put somewhere on this video, link to. When I made the first video, I think we were about here in the campaign. Like it had either just ended or it was about to end somewhere here. And now, as you can see, we are here. It is March 16th. We have March 15th of streaming data there. And yeah, I figured it'd be a good time to break down the results of the campaign because Playlist Push just made the report available. So here's the sitch. So let's start with just a basic overview. You can see when Tom put out this song that it got a spike and then it was kind of trending down before we got this playlist spike. And then over time, we were on some playlists and then we started getting taken off playlists. And here we're basically back to flat where we would have been without any playlisting. And that's really the overall takeaway. So I'll put in so if I make this from January to where we are now, you get a little bit of a better sense of what the data is saying. And this is just overall streams. So here's release, got a decent number of streams, and then it's kind of going down. And then this is the playlist, down, and now here we are here about a month after the campaign. So the takeaway is that there really wasn't a lasting bump. When you run these campaigns, you hope that you have this spike, and then you hope it settles at like a new normal, like somewhere up higher than this is. We're back about where I would have expected it to be after the campaign. So you kind of have this spike that just tacked on, but it didn't lead to any sort of lasting growth. So in terms of playlists, we are pretty much off all of the Playlist Push playlists at this point. These are some holdovers over the last month, but we basically dropped off of these playlists, and this is the one that's still driving most of the streams for the song, which is not a Playlist Push playlist. But we are off pretty much all of the Playlist Push playlists. In terms of source of streams, you can see over the last 28 days, they were pretty much all from those third-party placements. They're very, very little algorithmic play, just as a percentage, and some listeners' own playlists and libraries, so people who, like his fans who saved the song were streaming it multiple times. So this I thought was interesting. This is the locations where the song was streamed. So like if you look at and it's by country. If you look at this year, you can see like by far most of his fans were in the U.S. And then even with the Playlist Push campaign, it's mostly U.S. streams. Like you can scroll down and see the top countries. So like Netherlands, Germany, UK, Canada, Australia. So like there's a fairly wide representation of countries, but most of the Playlist Push streams seem to have been in the U.S., or at least like maybe not most, but the highest country was always the U.S. even throughout the Playlist Push campaign. That's a good sign that the playlists were legit. And speaking of that, I'm not going to break down analyzing all the playlists that we were placed on. I did that in the previous video, so again, I'll put the link to that here. But basically, I checked out all these playlists, and although they were not all perfect fits for his music, they were all like legitimate playlists that seemed to have a legitimate listener base. In terms of audience, like followers, listeners, you can see if we do this. So here's kind of the Playlist Push campaign, a little spike there. Streams, we know that deal. And followers, there's not like a noticeable change in the growth rate of followers when he's on the playlist versus when he's not. So they didn't have, the overall takeaway is that they didn't have a super noticeable impact on some of the longer term metrics, the playlist that he was placed on. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is flip over and show you the report from Playlist Push, because a month after your song runs, your campaign runs, they give you this report. In all honesty, I wouldn't attach a ton of meaning to this, but it's a little bit interesting. So they'll show you the number of playlists you were placed on. We were put on 12 playlists out of, I think, 23 or 24 pitches. This is streams, but it's just compared to 1 month ago. So the song, like right now, is at 22,000 streams. So they're saying that compared to a month ago, it has 21,000 extra streams, but that's not all from playlist push. I broke down some of the math in the last video, but I would guess that like 10 to 15,000 streams were from playlist push, but they're just doing like the overall number of streams. Same thing with listeners. We have more listeners than we did a month ago, but that is not necessarily all due to playlist push. Other playlists, I'm actually not sure. Maybe they're grabbing this just from like Spotify's API. I'm not sure even what they're meaning by this, because if you look at the song, like it's on 242 playlists, so I'm not sure where this +1 playlist is coming from. Something to ask. And then Spotify popularity. So Spotify has a popularity score for each song. It has some impact on whether you get algorithmic love. And over the course of the month, we were on the campaign. It went up to 27, which is not a bad score for an emerging indie artist. It's not a great score. They say once you get up into like the 40s, you start to get some serious traction with a song, but it's moving in the right direction. And that's probably partly due to Playlist Push's campaign. But again, the interesting thing about this report is like all these numbers are pretty hard to attribute directly to Playlist Push. Other than this, they get it on 12 playlists. So then the other thing they have in this report is artist growth. And interestingly, like 3 of these stats are over the last year. And then these don't say what they're comparing against. But editorial placements, he's been on 7 editorial playlists. You can read the numbers on the screen, but it's interesting just because like these aren't directly attributable to Playlist Push. We use Playlist Push during this time, but it's hard to be like, yeah, he's on, this many user curated playlists or this many editorial playlists. Obviously, editorial playlists aren't directly attributable to Playlist Push, so it's just kind of an interesting thing. I would say it's almost just like you're pulling in chart metric stats or some just general artist dashboard than like saying, here's the results specifically of Playlist Push, but there you go. So the overall verdict 1 month after the campaign, the streams were legitimate. They were from the US. They were from real listeners. Seemingly, the engagement rate stayed pretty steady, and the playlists all look good. But this campaign doesn't look like, at least so far, that it's had a long-term effect. So it looks like we just had that spike, and we're back down to where we would have been anyway. So basically, we got about 10 or 15,000 more streams than we would have if we hadn't used Playlist Push. But that's also just like a bump in the road over the long term. Hopefully the song continues to grow. And of course, there's always a chance that we see some algorithmic growth later on. This is a song, for example, that I ran a Playlist Push campaign like out before I can set the date range. But so it was just coasting, and then it had this little bump from some algorithmic stuff, and then it's back here. So you never know with a song. You can see that maybe in 6 months this will get some random algorithmic boost that maybe was attributable to Playlist Push. But for now, the overall takeaway is that there were some short-term streams, but it doesn't appear like it'll have a super long-term effect. And that's kind of what you're looking at with playlisting. I would say it's about 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5 if you're working with a really good company. Campaigns will noticeably trigger the algorithm. And then the other times, you're getting that bump, but you are not necessarily getting the long-term growth. So that's a topic for another day. So yeah, hopefully this video was helpful. If you have any questions about the campaign, about using Playlist Push, give me a shout in the comments. I'm trying to be pretty responsive on this channel since I'm working on building it up right now. Appreciate you watching, and as always, good luck out there promoting your own music.